There are a lot of people like me speaking now finally because we're fed up. We are fed up for the lies and misinformation and the extreme hatred that have been fed to us and our children and our families, and most of it driven by the intense anti-Israeli campaign waged globally. So we're saying, no, we're not following you, we're not listening to you, we're not allowing you to recruit our children. We're following Quran, and Quran is pro-Zionist, Quran is pro-Israel, and Quran is the opposite of what you're peddling.
My guest today is Sheikh Musa Drammeh, a Muslim Imam who is saying things that most Muslim leaders won't say about Hamas, about Israel, and even about Islam itself. He's challenged widely accepted interpretations of the Quran, questioned long-held religious teachings, and openly defended Israel's right to exist, all while facing backlash, threats, and being labeled as a traitor by some. Sheikh Musa Drammeh, thank you very much for joining us.
It is my pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for having me on.
Sheikh Musa, you've said that you're a target because of your views. How serious is that threat? Have you ever actually feared for your life? What exactly are you saying that's triggering that kind of reaction?
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again for having me. And I think individuals like me have been constantly threatened by the operators who are so extreme in their hatred to Israel, Zionism, and to a large degree became anti-Semites. And so if you have Imams and Islamic scholars that are voicing Quranic views, this is not personal view, Quranic views about how Quran is so pro-Israel and pro-Zionist, that cancels their 8 decades of indoctrination to the contrary. And because of that, we become threat to their livelihood because they built livelihood through misinformation, through hatred, and through anti-Israel campaign. And we are now coming to say we are no longer going to allow you to dominate the narrative and to continue to mislead the public and to continue to peddle your anti-Israel, anti-Zionism that have absolutely no basis and no fact from Quran. So we are going to challenge you, and we're going to be public, we're going to be visible, we're going to be intentional because we are truthful. So because of that, unfortunately, they want to eliminate us, silence us, eliminate us, and they will celebrate if they're victorious in eliminating us. But they plan, God plan, and we're with God's plan. So we have no problem with them. And there are so many websites that have our pictures and with guns pointed at us. They have so many misleading campaigns. They have boycotts that are coordinated against us and our interests, and they assassinate our characters and mislead people about who we are.
You've said that Islam today is not what most Muslims are actually practicing. What exactly do you think that they're getting wrong about it?
Islam is continuation of the Abrahamic religions. If you go to chapter 5, verses 48, even chapter 5 from 1 to 49 affirms the continuation of Abrahamic legacy, Abrahamic faith, Abrahamic belief in one God, and Abrahamic tradition. If you have Muslims who espouse anti-Semitism, anti-Christianity, and anti-Israel and anti-Zionism, then you have Muslims who do not practice their religion. If they do go back to Quran and value the instructions given and the commandments, then the Jewish people all over the world will find the most comfortable, the safest, the most sacred place within the Muslim world. There will never ever be a single Jew, whether you are pro-Zionist or anti-Zionist, pro-Israel or not, that will find Islam and Muslims to be a threat to their lives, to be a threat to their interests, and to be a threat to their safety. Only Muslims who do not understand their religion become threat, to the Jewish world or become anti-Israel, anti-Zionism. So there's a growing community of Muslims who base their Islamic practice solely on Quran. We do not subscribe to the scholarly work that have been peddled for centuries as Islamic practice. They're not Islamic practice. They are added by scholars. Quran gives us all, the instructions that we need to practice our religion. But the overwhelming majority of Muslims practice what we call Hadith-based Islam. And Hadith-based Islam is where you find anti-Semitic, instructions, anti-Zionist, and where you encourage extremism, where you normalize ignorance, where you find misogyny. So many whole host of anti-Islamic practices can be found in Hadith-based Islam. But Quran-based Islam, you will not find that because it is the continuation of the Abrahamic religions.
Are you basically calling for like a reform of Islam itself to get rid of the Hadith, focus more on the Quran? Is that what you're pushing for?
No, I'm not calling for any reform. I'm calling for the return of the true Islamic religion. There's no such thing as reform. Quran came as a reform for what was sent before. So therefore, I'm not calling for anybody to reform or change or moderate, concern, nothing. I'm calling Muslims to be Muslims. I'm calling all those who said they believe in Allah and they follow the example of Muhammad to use Quran because Quran is sufficient, to be used for 100% of anything that is Islamic. Everything else that you use that is not directly from Quran is the practice and the instruction from somebody else. Whether you call it that hadith or anything else, that is what it is. Quran is sufficient. Muhammad was told by Allah, as of now, the religion that we were formulating for you has completed. And therefore, anybody who wants to follow your examples must find instructions within the Quran. Nobody else, nothing else. The hadith that now we follow came hundreds of years after Muhammad's death. And nowhere in Quran where Allah directed us to follow anything other than what was confined within the Quran. So I'm not asking for people to reform or become moderate or conservative. I'm asking them to be Muslims. And to be Muslim, Islam is the only book that can teach them true Islam. No hadith, nothing else.
How come more Imams haven't spoken up? Do you think that there's a knowledge problem or are they afraid? What is it in your estimation?
Hey, we have Abraham, we have Moses, we have Jesus, we have Muhammad, we have Prophet. This world, we've been here for billions and billions of years. And, we always, deviate from the true message of God. And therefore, every time, God sent a reminder, to remind people that, hey, you deviate from, the straight path. So if, we have 2 billion Muslims and only maybe million of us are saying this, that does not invalidate the fact because Muhammad came at a time where the Arabian were deemed the most ignorant group of people. And Quran described how ignorant they were and the practices that they were practicing are so inhumane and so barbaric. And Muhammad reminded them, you cannot do this anymore. So if this world has been in existence for billions of years, and all of a sudden Allah find the need to send a reminder to the Arab world. So you can validate us here, to remind that, hey, you're deviating from Quran, even though we are a very small minority, but that does not make us wrong because majority doesn't always, right, and minority doesn't always wrong. And history taught us that. So there are a lot of people like me speaking now finally because we're fed up. We are fed up for the lies and misinformation and the extreme hatred that have been fed to us and our children and our family, and most of it driven by the intense anti-Israeli campaign waged globally. So we're saying, no, we're not following you, we're not listening to you, we're not allowing you to recruit our children. We're following Quran, and Quran is pro-Zionist, Quran is pro-Israel, and Quran is the opposite of what you're peddling.
Now, how does your message resonate with the people in your mosque? Are there people that agree with you, but that won't say it publicly, but a lot of people that agree with you privately?
Yes, I mean, that's the reality of life. Even our own spouses and children may not always agree, with everything, but that does not cancel the true nature of my views and my sermons and my speeches, because the reason why I'm very public, because I want to be challenged. You cannot challenge me based on the Quran. You can challenge based on what you've been taught, which I don't care, or based on the Hadith that is fabricated, which I don't care. But when it comes to Quran, now the single Islamic scholar can challenge the Quran that I'm using because it's Quran. Now, you agree with it, fine. You don't agree with it. Quran said there are those who will believe and there are those who will not believe. There are those who will even question the existence of God. But that does not cancel, truth. That does not cancel the authenticity of my messages. And I am no longer alone. There are millions of enlightened Muslims that are so fed up. And there are so many pro-Israel Muslim scholars now that are saying, we've been duped, we've been lied to, we've been misled. Now we know the fact, and we can no longer allow that to happen. So we're growing, and sooner or later, we will be the majority because truth will always prevail over falsehood. And right now we are at the intersection of truth being manifested because we are tired of the violence caused by ignorance, caused by anti-Israel sentiments that have been inculcated into our brains for the past 7 to 8 decades.
Now, there's a verse in the Quran, Surah chapter 5, verse 21, that says that God assigned the Holy Land to the children of Israel, right? Why is this almost never talked about in the Muslim world?
Well, even before we get to the 21, let's talk about the 20, chapter 5, verses 20, where Moses reminded his people, he said, you have to be grateful to God who created kings and prophets, and God who give you what God doesn't give any other people. You have to be grateful. That's what Moses said. Then Moses continued on to chapter 5, verses 21, which you said. He said, enter the Holy Land, which Allah assigned for you. But do not be ungrateful and do not be crazy. Otherwise, you will be overthrown. So our Holy Quran directly connect, the children of Israel, the Israelis, the Jews, to the Holy Land. And the Muslim scholars who have always either put it aside, and some even falsely said, oh, you know what, this was true then, but not true now, or all these things. People are tired of it, and they're saying, if Quran says so, who are you now to deny it? So that's what Quran said, you're right, and that's what we are promoting, and no Islamic scholar can ever come up with anything other than the children of Israel is given to the Holy Land.
And one of the things they say is that the children of Israel that's spoken about in the Quran is not the Jewish people nowadays. How do we disprove that? Isn't it obvious that the Jewish people now are the same children of Israel from the Quran?
Well, first of all, nobody, no matter how much you're hateful to whatever's going on, nobody can ever disconnect the continuation of Jewish people in the Holy Land. That nobody. It doesn't matter whether they're 2 or million or 10 million. It doesn't matter. Nobody can say this era there was no Jewish nothing. There has always been a continuation of the presence of the people of Moses in the Holy Land. Be weak, strong, small, in number does not matter. That's number one. Number two, I'm speaking to you as Muslim, and if you want to connect my lineage to Muhammad, you're probably not going to find it. So I'm proud to be Muslim. Why would someone who's born Jews or even convert to Judaism and adhere to the doctrine of Judaism be denied the connection to the Holy Land? Makes absolutely no sense. The Holy Land belongs to those that Allah assigned to them, and that's the Holy Quran. And it is only hypocrites who said, oh, you come from this, you come from that. Guess what? By the way, they may come from there, but guess what? You kicked them out of the Holy Land before. Now they're returning. A lot of people from Europe, from North America, from North Africa, whatever, they're coming back home. They're coming back home. So born in Europe doesn't mean you're not Jewish or doesn't cancel your connection to the Holy Land. It is all about making excuses just to deny the rightful connection of Jewish people to the Holy Land. By the way, this does not cancel any connection of the Palestinian to the land. It does not deny them right, nothing. It just proves that the Jewish people have a homeland assigned to them by Allah, and nobody should interfere with it.
So you think that part of this Israeli-Palestine conflict is rooted in people not being told the full truth about their own religion?
Yes, 1,200% ignorance. Recently I've been saying, I said there are two types of anti-Semitism. There's a European anti-Semitism rooted in a biblical thing. You kill God's son, we don't like you. You kill Jesus, you don't like you. That's our savior. We don't subscribe to that. That's not our problem. We don't have any biblical story that connect any anti-Semitic, nothing. Our anti-Semitism in the Muslim world is all about Israel. 100% all about Israel. There is no biblical nothing. So therefore, it is all about ignorance. If Muslim scholars from day one were telling the public the truth, we would not be where we are. December 1st, 1948, there was a Jericho conference where the stakeholders, both from Jordanian, Transjordan, and Palestinians, elected officials, religious leaders, scholars came together and they said, we are one community, one ummah, one language, one religion, one people, sharing one land. Let us have two-state solution, Israel and then us. And then it was almost ratified, but guess what? Arab League, as usual, from Egypt, deny that opportunity. Until now, it has not been actualized. But we already have two-state solution: Transjordan, which is Palestine, Jordan, and Israel. Problem solved.
Now, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, I heard you speaking about that. Can you clarify, when did it become, something that belongs to Muslims? The Quran doesn't clearly speak about Jerusalem. Can you go into that a little bit for me?
Absolutely. The connection that have been universally made between the religious connection to the Jerusalem for Muslims never ever authenticated. Number one, Muhammad never ever went to Jerusalem. There has never ever been a single verse from the Quran that says Muhammad went to Jerusalem. Therefore, Muhammad was not raised from Masjid Aqsa to heaven. That never happened. Quran never said it. This is all cartoonists. Muhammad was a man, and Muhammad has no access to God, heaven, nothing. He was a man appointed as prophet, Nabi, but that doesn't mean that he can fly, Al-Buraq and Bula, whatever. All this is cartoon nonsense. It doesn't exist. Muhammad never went to Jerusalem. Masjid Aqsa did not exist during the lifetime of Muhammad, and therefore the connection does not exist. The third holiest mosque never existed because before Masjid Aqsa, the fourth hijrah was to Africa. And there was a masjid prayed by Muhammad's daughter and Muhammad's daughter's husband. If there's any sanctity, if there's any special masjid, then the first masjid would be in East Africa. But they're not talking about it. When Muhammad did the second hijrah, the very first masjid, Masjid Quba in Medina, until now is there. Nobody talks about it. Now you have Mecca and you have Medina. Where will you place the third holiest mosque? It's all about political connection, not spiritual. We are not saying Jerusalem is not important to Muslims. It is important like any other. But our focal point is Mecca and Medina, not Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a spiritual center for Judaism and a political capital of Israel. Mecca and Medina is a spiritual focal point for Muslims, and we have 50 other 7 capitals that we can be proud of fighting Jerusalem, the only Jewish nation, because we are falsely tying religious importance that doesn't exist. It's more politics than godly.
And where did the current understanding of this Al-Aqsa being the holy place for Muslims come from? We know that Hamas on October 7th, their goal was Al-Aqsa. They called it Tufan Al-Aqsa, right? Where did this come from? Do you know the historical background?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood, founded in the 1990-20, Muslim Brotherhood's founding principle was to fight the intrusion of European concept, colonial concept, and whatever, and then eliminate, Arab culture, Islam, and whatever. And now they said, oh, we gotta protect our culture, our way of life, our religion, whatever. And the same Muslim Brotherhood that was founded on those principles was the same Muslim Brotherhood that gave birth to the Arab League. And the Arab League's founding principle was to prevent the establishment of a Jewish homeland in so-called Palestine. That was their founding thing. And then because of that was the founding thing, the only element that they can use to unite the Arab League and later, to the wider Muslim world is to connect Jerusalem so intensely to Islam so that every Muslim said, if I don't support their cause, I'm not good Muslim, because now they make anti-Israel, pro-Palestine the 6 pillars of Islam. If you discount the religious connection, then you have no argument anymore. Because if they're talking about land, Palestinians don't have land. How many Muslims, millions of Muslims dying, fighting for homeland, and they don't care about it? If you take Sudan alone, in 3 years, there are more deaths in Sudan between Muslims and Muslims than the entire deaths of Palestinians from 1947 until today. There are more deaths in Sudan in 3 years than the entire deaths caused by the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. If we disconnect the misinformation of religious connection, then there's no more argument. That is why OIC and Arab League will never ever use the Quran to say, you know what, Makkah and Medina is a focal point. They will always strengthen, the importance of Aqsa to the Muslim world. That's why they say it's the third holiest mosque. They can never prove it in the Quran. The whole argument is a campaign to mobilize Muslims to be angry at anything that touches Jerusalem, anything, but has no basis in the Holy Quran. Again and again, this has nothing to do with diminishing Palestinians' right to homeland. This has nothing to do with denying Palestinians' right to a bright future. This has nothing to do with canceling Palestinians' right. Nothing. It just proves that if we do the right thing and use Quran, we can stop this conflict tomorrow. And then we can have Palestine. We can have Palestine, which is Palestine, Jordan, Transjordan, and then we can have Israel. Both nations continue to be safe, secure, enjoy their sovereignty and independence, and they thrive. But if we continue to deny what God said we must follow, then unfortunately, we're going to continue to hurt more Palestinians. We're going to prolong their plight, and at the end, we're going to deny them statehood. Because right now, after October 7, Palestine state elements within the Israeli government have been strengthened. They have been proven right. They have been vindicated. They say, we cannot live with these people. You cannot give them a state. It will be whatever. All I'm saying is that if we go back to Quran and then we lessen the connection between the spiritual connection that we build and then take that spiritual connection to where Allah put it, which is Mecca and Medina, we'll have two-state solution that live side by side, Jordan and Israel, and no more fighting. But if we continue to believe that the only success is to destroy Israel, then Allah will destroy us, because Allah put Israel where Israel is, and Allah said in the Quran.
Now, you've mentioned that October 7th wasn't resistance, it was anti-Semitism. Why do you think that's so hard for people to admit?
To them, it's a resistance. It's a continuation of their resisting, the occupation, the apartheid, whatever they call it. You can call things whatever. But all I'm saying is that October 7 has done more harm to the legitimate Palestinian cause than anything else Israel can do. October 7 was the worst milestone for those who fight for the rights of Palestinians, for those who fight for two-state solution, for those who feel so bad about what is happening to the Palestinians. Nothing could ever have done to Palestinians what Hamas did on October 7. And I am now, as an ordinary outsider, predicting it is not recoverable. I was in Israel November 2022. While we were there traveling throughout Israel, we witnessed Israelis fighting among themselves. Secular versus religion, far left, far right, right wing, left wing, And even the reserves, Israeli reserves, said they're not going to fight if called upon under this administration. Because Israel had just elected the most right-wing government in its history. And the far left did not like it. And a lot of groups, a lot of parties didn't like it. Anyway, and they were fighting. They were marching in Tel Aviv almost every day. Constant marching, demonstrating. And even Netanyahu's own residents, They were camping there, marching. Then we were back in Israel November 2023, a couple of weeks after October 7th. What we witnessed then was the exact opposite, because the Israelis now forget about far left, far right, religion, nothing. They were fighting for survival, because what October 7 did to the Israeli psyche was so dramatic that they never thought that that was possible. They never thought that a group like Hamas was able to penetrate, and they never thought that IDF will take hours and hours before they can get to where they needed to get to. So the psychological trauma that October 7 caused was so, so unimaginable. That's why they no longer fighting left and right. They were fighting for survival as people and survival as nation. Now, what I was saying is that what Hamas did on October 7 was the worst damage that any enemy of Palestine could have ever imagined. Hamas became the worst enemy of Palestinian cause. And Hamas took the Palestinian cause 1,000 years back, and Hamas almost canceled even the legitimacy of having a Palestinian state, because there are right-wing parties and groups that do not want to have a Palestinian state next to them. And what October 7 did was to validate their views, was to prove them right, was to strengthen them, and to weaken the many Israelis who fight for two-state solution, who even fight for the rights of Palestinian homeland. And, so many Jewish people sacrifice their profession, their resources, on behalf of the Palestinians. But unfortunately, October 7 really not only embarrassed them, but put them in a worse predicament. So Hamas is the worst Palestinian enemy that we can ever imagine. And I don't think we will ever, or the Palestinians will ever recover from October 7. Israel will recover from October 7. Israel will be strengthened. They will be wiser. Israel will invent the tools and systems that will make it a global envy. But the Palestinians and their cause has suffered irreparable harm by Hamas on October 7.
Now, how much of that has to do with the leaders in Gaza, the leaders of Hamas that subjugated the people for all these years? And at the end, the grand finale was October 7th. How much blame do they have? And what were they expecting would happen on October 7th? What do you think their goal was?
No, one of the leaders said, a couple of days or weeks after October 7, I listened to one of the leaders, I think Masal, being interviewed by one of the Arab channel. He said they knew what was coming. They knew what Netanyahu was capable, and they knew that the death and destruction was going to be rampant. But he said, he narrated what happened in Vietnam, what happened in other places, how people gain independence. To them, this was the only way to gain, number one, to isolate Israel from the international community. By the way, they did a great job. And number two, to show the Palestinian Authority that you cannot work with them, and now we are the legitimate force that stand for Palestinians. So the calculation was made to isolate Israel from the international community, at the same time to really make any group, whether it's a Palestinian Authority or Fatah, irrelevant, because you don't count, you're not doing anything. And Hamas did a great job in isolating Israel, especially in the public opinion world, and Hamas did a great job, highlighting the sufferings, post October 7 of the Palestinians, and their marketing arm did not suffer, but the harm they caused to the legitimate Palestinian cause is irreparable. They will never recover from it, and I don't know whether there will ever be two-state solution. But right now, it is more difficult, because even the Israelis who are more to the left, who used to fight for two-state solution, they're no longer doing it, because Hamas give them the reason to be scared of fighting for that cause. So I don't know if there will ever be two-state solution. But all I'm saying is that Hamas is now the worst enemy of the Palestinian cause, regardless of what their calculation was.
Now, since October 7th, we've seen people openly supporting Hamas around the world, marching in support of them. Why do you think so many people refuse to condemn Hamas and to condemn what happened on that day?
The anti-Israel, anti-Semitism is so normalized, is so widespread. It's not confined within the Muslims or within the Middle East. It is global. Anti-Israel and anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism has become so ingrained even in nations that you would expect them to know or behave better. The worst thing that have happened, and I think I'm a Muslim. Seeing one Palestinian child die being bombed it's not something that I ever wish to ever witness. I don't want to see a Jewish child. I don't want to see a Palestinian child. What happened October 7th, I don't want to ever imagine it. I don't want to see it. But when you put your human or humanistic heart on what happened on October 7th, and for people that watch some of the videos shown by Hamas, and the level of brutality and the level of discount of the basic value of life, whether dealing with the girls or a woman carrying the babies and slaughtered, and the level of brutality that was done and then televised and then celebrated. And then immediately the world held rallies pro Hamas, free Palestine. The Israelis will say, I'm sure, said to themselves, now we know we have no friend. Now we know we have no allies we can depend on. Now we are on our own. And therefore now is a game changer. In order for us to survive, we have to do what we need to do to survive. And I believe that was the motive for when people were calling ceasefire. I went online. I said, are you an idiot? Did you just witness what happened October 7th? Did you condemning it? Have you ever condemned what happened October 7th? Have you ever publicly condemned it? And if the answer is no, what gives you authority to say ceasefire? What gives you authority to say anything other than keep your mouth shut? Anybody who watched what happened October 7th from Hamas and not condemning it to the highest degree has no right to call for ceasefire, has no right to say anything, I don't care if, whatever. We must act with heart in our bodies. And anybody who witnessed what happened October 7th, the first thing you must do is to sympathize with the victims, to sympathize with those young men and women, and then those senior citizens, the babies. And if you are so anti-Israel to a point where you celebrate it, then your ceasefire call is nothing. And that's why Israel take it as nothing. I told the world, I said, I don't care how many resolutions United Nations pass for ceasefire. As long as there's one hostage held, there will never be ceasefire. And this is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Hamas used religion to commit these atrocities, to kill people, to rape women, all the things that they did. They said that this is what Allah wants. This is what God wants. Obviously, you're saying that it's the opposite, that God does not want it. Can you clarify what does God want? What does Allah want?
Very good question and very easy question to answer. December took two groups of Muslim scholars to Israel, intellectual Muslim scholars, and we're so proud of the outcome after they visited, almost all of them for the first time. And now they are Zionists. I'm telling you now, just one time visit, and what they saw was the complete opposite to what they have been taught throughout their life. But this is what happened. One of the blessings we had was Israel is building the Museum of October 7th. which I think has not opened yet. Even a lot of Israelis don't know the existence of it. But anyway, we were given the preview to it. We were given access to it. While we were there, they have a lot of materials. The thing that the dead Hamas fighters, their propagandas and their uniforms and shoes and books and messages, electronic as well as whatever they have, is coming. Once that museum open, people will have access to it. But anyway, one of the video that they saw, a very charismatic preacher, Imam, giving pep talk to the Palestinians, rallying for them to join the cause of jihad and making it so vitally important as a believer to fight Israel and to join Hamas. But he was using an hadith, a fabricated hadith, completely fabricated hadith, no bearing in Islam, no authentic nothing. But the way he put it is so convincing. That's what these scholars are using. But that's why the connection of religiosity to the conflict will never ever be diminished, because the moment you diminish it, you no longer have argument. You have two people fighting for land, and that happens all over the world. The only justification for Muslims to rally the way they are rallying is that connection. So Quran, the same hadith that the scholar was using in a very convincing way, very authoritative way, that if you don't join, you pretty much you're loser, you're not Muslim, but it's completely fabricated. So this hadith said, they asked Muhammad, when will the hour come? Meaning that when will the end of the world? And Muhammad's reply was, it will happen when Muslims and Jews fight, and Muslims will kill Jews to a point where some Jews will run behind the tree or stone, and the tree or the stone will call them and say, come, there's a Jew here, come and kill the Jew. That's what the hadith said, fabricated. Now, Quran, the same question. They ask Muhammad, when will the hour? And what the Quran said, only Allah knows the hour. You don't know anything about when the world is going to end. Only Allah knows it. How could Muhammad say that in the Quran and they say Muhammad said in hadith? Makes absolutely no sense. That's why the whole campaign is based on fabrication. Because if you go to Quran, no more campaign and there will be peace. What Allah wants is, Middle East is a special place for special people. It has one of the noblest history. It has so many great things that came out of the Middle East. And Allah wants peaceful coexistence, harmony. Allah wants tolerance. Allah wants life, not death. Allah wants love, not hatred. And Allah wants Israel within the Arab world, peacefully coexisting, thriving in commerce, in everything. Since Abraham Accords were signed, our two trips, the plane that took us to Israel was United Arab Emirates plane, full with Jewish people and others. Now you can see the benefit of Abraham Accord. If UAE, beautiful big plane, is taking Jews and Gentiles back and forth, that is what Allah wants. Not what Hamas is saying, not what anybody else, but Abraham Accord expansion, where all the Arab nations finally said Israel is a nation that is part of us forever. And we will do everything to normalize relations. We will do everything, to build up our economies. And we will eliminate all the walls so that no Jews will ever hesitate to travel to any Arab nation, any Muslim nation. There will be unfettered access to the Muslim world, because after all, we are one family spiritually, we are one family in humanity, and we are one family in the geography. That's what Allah wants.
Now, we know that the Islamic Republic of Iran presents itself as defending Muslims, especially Palestinians. Do you believe that that's genuine, strategic? Obviously, we saw them kill their own thousands, tens of thousands of their own people. What is your view of the Islamic Republic of Iran?
No, not genuine. Genuine, they have their own Islamic doctrine, and which is not the same doctrine that the Arab League or the OIC subscribe to. So using Israel, by the way, Iran is the only nation. Israel has a lot of enemies, Muslims and non-Muslims, but Iran is the only enemy that vow to destroy Israel and that finance for that goal and that dispatch proxies, to achieve that. Iran is the only nation. Therefore, I, as a Muslim who read Quran, will never subscribe to any nation that promise to destroy Israel. I don't care which nation is that. Now, do I approve any war? No, I'm a peacemaker. I'm a peace builder. However, my wish is that should this current government collapse, the next government, the very first thing I want them to do, the very first thing, even before they go to the masjid prayer, to declare normalization of relations with Israel. That will be the greatest milestone ever, because Iran and Israel must have the closest relationship. Because Iran, by the way, is the only nation now where you have larger Jewish presence, even in the midst of the revolution, calling small devil and big devil and all the small Satan. Muslims must be wise enough to know that Iran's position on Israel is un-Islamic, inhumane, and not defendable. And I hope that should this current government collapse, the next one, the very first act they will take is to announce the establishment or the reestablishment of all relations with the state of Israel.
Do you think that the media is helping people understand this conflict or actually confusing it, misinforming it?
If the media promote peace, they wouldn't make money. They don't believe that money or revenue can be generated from peace. I'll give you a story. We have one of the most powerful peace building programs between Muslims and Jews in New York, where we have 4 schools, 2 Islamic schools, 2 Jewish schools. Their 5th graders every year come together, follow a curriculum, visit mosque, visit synagogue, go play together, go to museums, learn about each other. One of the most powerful. Every year, the graduation is at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in Lower Manhattan. And every year we invite the media. And the media never interested in coming to see these beautiful children, Jews and Muslims, at the Holocaust Memorial Museum. And one year, I invited all the media and remind them, I said that tonight is the graduation where you have hundreds of Jews and Arabs and Muslims converging to the Museum of Heritage. Nobody bothered. And the same night, there was a terrorist who threatened to bomb a synagogue in Riverdale here in New York. The entire media world thought that I was the only person that they need to talk to. Everybody reaching out to me. I said, you go to hell, because why would I talk to you for a crazy person who want to bomb where we have children who want to build? You don't care about peace building. You care about destruction. I'm not talking to you. I didn't talk to any one of them. So the media has this wrong concept of that if it believes it leads, if it, whatever, nonsense. We need to have media that is God conscious, that take peace building and love and harmony as part of their programming. By the way, we have written so many guidance to media all over the world about how they can be profitable, but not continue to be self-destructive and continue to follow scandals and divisions and hatred. The only thing they saw in the Muslim world is the craziest, most toxic, most ignorant people spewing anti-Semitic, anti-West, anti-Israel, all these things. But there are a lot of people like me that they only talk to when they need to. Other than that, they will never give you a platform. And we need to change that. Same thing is what they're doing with Israel. Do you know how many Jewish people who abandon their comfort, who sacrifice? I mean, the reason why when people go to Israel, when Muslims go to Israel, they change because they see the commitment of Israelis to peace and harmony. And they see the Israeli having a heart for Palestinian rights, for Palestinian dignity. They don't want violence. They're tired of it. But the media wouldn't say that. The media will only show you the division, the violence, the hatred, all these things. So the media is part of the problem, and we need more help with talking to them.
What do you think the problem is on the universities, the college campuses? Are these young people being influenced, indoctrinated to hate? What is your thoughts of that?
This is part of the campaign. You see, the anti-Israeli operators You got to give them credit. They realize that they cannot beat Israel militarily. They realize that they cannot beat America militarily. They realize that they cannot detach. They cannot sever the bond, the sacred bond between the United States and Israel. And once they realized that, they said, now we're going to go to public opinion. And they are very, very sophisticated. They have funds coming from the Soros of the world and funders. By the way, some of these funders are Jewish funders, by the way. These are anti-Semite, not anti-Semite, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel Jewish groups. It's so amazing that the biggest headache Israel come from some Jewish, groups. Even all these demonstrations in New York, guess who lead them? These anti-Israel, anti-Zionist Jews, and that gives umbrella, cover, to the real anti-Semites. So, the college campuses are where these elements, anti-Israel elements, said, we cannot beat them militarily. We're going to go to where we can beat them, house of worship, schools, and Ivy League school. And that's exactly what they have done effectively.
You said that you cried thinking about Israeli children running into bomb shelters. Why did that affect you so deeply? And currently we're seeing it on a daily basis again.
I've visited so many Holocaust museums, and I'm heading to Poland actually next month. And the theme of this museum is the savagery and the denial of humanity to people, to citizens. This is not foreigner. This is citizens of your country, your nation. And the brutality. Every museum you visit, you see what should never, ever, ever happen. Now, we say that's a past. Now, there's still some Holocaust survivors. You meet these Holocaust survivors. These are people that look forward, that want to put Holocaust behind them, that believe that we have now moved to a position where we cannot tolerate this anymore, where whether you're Jewish or not, you're not that vulnerable anymore. And then you go to Israel. Then you go to the homes. Israel, homeland for the Jews, where they should be proud. They should feel the safest, the most secure. They should enjoy their sovereignty, their independence, their God-given entitlement to be left alone in their homes. And you go to their homes and you see the mandated shelter, bomb shelter in each home. And then you see the children, the very first lesson among the 44th lessons that they learn in life, Jewish children, is if you're going to survive, you better learn to run within seconds to a bomb shelter. That should never happen. And if that doesn't make anyone cry, the only nation under the sun subjugated to that condition, and that should not happen. And you just have to be human being to say Israelis should never be singled out to be the only place where bomb shelters are mandatory and children knowing how to run to them is part of their earliest education. It should not happen. And anytime I think about it, I get upset and angry, and it should never ever happen. And again, this also speaks to the plight of the Palestinians, because if I'm feeling this to the Israelis, imagine I also feel the same thing for the Palestinians. But the Palestinians, the leadership is everything. If you are guided wrongly, then the calamity becomes what they call martyrdom or part of your religion. But this is the leadership misguidance to the victims that they lead. Palestinian children and Palestinian women, Palestinian men should begin to enjoy the same citizenship that the Arab Israeli citizens who are thriving in universities, thriving in the medical institutions, thriving to the startup nation opportunities, because they finally realize that being the citizens of Israel, which give them what no other Arab nation gave them, the democracy, the liberty, the freedom, to choose their leader. They don't have in any other Arab nation except Arab Israelis. The Palestinians deserve the same thing so that Israeli homes will no longer be mandated for bomb shelters.
When did you start speaking so openly about Israel? Was there something that caused you to do this? If you can go
Yes,
a little bit, you start.
my wife and I, we are immigrants to the United States. We are naturalized citizens. We came to America for the reasons almost anybody come to America. And we were blessed, through art, through going through ups and downs. We were blessed, to become investment bankers. And we even launched our own bank, Sahara Associate, on Wall Street. We were proud. We were considered among the successful immigrants. Then 9/11 happened. My office was on Wall Street, 80 Wall Street. And my meetings used to be held at the Twin Towers. I knew the Twin Towers as much as the architecture. I know the area very well. Until now, I always go to the financial district. This is where my heart is. I love New York, but the financial district is in my heart. When I saw what happened on 9/11, when I saw my fellow New Yorkers, men and women, I don't know the names, I don't know their religion, I don't know their ethnicity. All I saw was fellow New Yorkers who went to work they work on every floor to those buildings. When I saw some of them flying from 100 floor, 80 floor, 90 floor, heading to the ground, and knowing there was zero chance of survival, but that was the best option. If that was the best option, knowing that there's a zero chance of survival, but that's the best option, I said something needs to be done. And I will do whatever I can. My wife and I left Wall Street because we said, this is not the world we want to live in. This is not the world we want to leave our children or grandchildren. We will do whatever. For 7 months, I studied what to do, what Islam is, why these people are so angry, why terrorism, why extremism, why radicalization. I studied everything, and I came to the conclusion that the problem is Israel and Palestine. If we don't fix it, we will never fix radicalization and extreme hatred. And that's why we dedicate our life. That's where we start. Since 9/11, 7 months after 9/11, I became who I became right now, a new person. I'm not afraid of the threat. I'm not afraid of the opposition. As a matter of fact, I am so proud that my views are being opposed. That means I'm being truthful. So there are so many threats and boycotts and whatever. It only elevates us because it says to us, you're doing the right thing. That's where I began to speak, and that's where I became a new person.
I'm glad I asked you that question. I didn't know. I watched your interview with Shai Davidai, and you mentioned that growing up, you didn't know your parents. They passed away when you were very young, right? Take us through that. And I just found it very inspiring that you became so successful without having that support from your parents. Maybe take us into that.
My mom, I think, died when I was maybe 3 years old, whatever. I don't know my mom, period. My father, early age, maybe 8, 9. But even my father, 9, because, our culture in West Africa, you don't always go to your father, kiss your father, whatever, because you don't even go to your father's room. Or even go to bed. There's a distance. So I don't know my father. I don't know my parents, period. What they call orphan, to me, I don't know what orphan is. All I know is that when Allah takes something away, usually there are bigger and better things. And I use it to my advantage. I'm not a person that grew up people giving gifts and shoes and things. Never. Nobody, that's not my life. And until now, I don't care for it. I grew up as an independent minded person. Since I'm 10 years old, I became complete independent. Even when I was in Africa growing up, I was very reserved. I used to, even the same village, people didn't know I existed. But I always was principled. One thing that, if there's anything I can be given credit for, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm always principled. I always analyze things, and if it's something that makes sense, you will find me. And if I say I'll do it, I'll do it. If I say doesn't make sense, doesn't make sense. Even with religion. So that's how I grow up in a village where nobody has anything. Everybody's poor, but they're all family. So therefore, whether your parents are there or not, it doesn't matter because even the ones whose parents are there don't have anything. So you sleep in the same concrete and you know do the same thing. So that's the environment that I grew up. I pretty much became independent since the age of 9, 10 years old, and think for myself and act according to the principle and what I believe. And later on, I went to different part of different part of Senegal, and I went to school. From there, I went to the Senegal capital, Dakar, and started business. And you know, from there, somebody said, I want to help you to go to America. I know that this is one of your dreams, and I said that would be great. So he helped me, and I was able to get a visa, and he bought a ticket for me, and I came here, and so I'm here ever since.
Now, you face backlash, threats, rejection, like we started. What keeps you going when it feels like everyone is against you? How are you so strong in what you believe in?
When you know that you're doing the right thing. Every single day, I can't wait to wake up to express my views, and this is my mission. This is what I'm created for. This is why I'm here. If you knew how many missed deaths in my life, how many times that I should have been dead, then you understand that if I'm still here, then there's a reason. And I believe that the reason is what I'm doing now. And by the way, the effect that my activism has is unquantifiable. A lot of people don't know um, that the effectiveness of this, because a lot of Muslim scholars who used to be some of the worst enemy of mine because of it, they are now so soft, because for the first time they analyze the situations and they realize that I have been very, very strong opposition to his views, but now I understand. Some of them came with us to Israel and they completely changed. And a lot of them no longer say anything. They're quiet now. Even the sermons change. So what we're doing is making a huge difference. The problem is that bad people want us to be silent because our silence is license for them. They don't want people like us. They don't want activists that are so brave and so, willing to express the views of how evil they are. And that's what I'm doing. And if I die today in the process, I guarantee I want people to celebrate. I don't want anybody to cry, because this is what I'm called to do. This is why I'm still alive. There 6 times gone on my back, I'm still alive. There are so many things that if I told you and I'm still alive, then you know that there's a reason why God wants me to be here. And, taking Muslims to Israel is so powerful. And then you have these Muslim scholars who used to thought that it is the sixth pillar of Islam to oppose Zionism, to oppose Israel and to fight them. And yet now to come back and say we were wrong. We were wrong. And now becoming champions and ambassadors and Zionists themselves. This is what I'm called to do, and this is what I'm going to do. And nothing but God will stop me from doing it. No bullet or knife or punch or opposition will ever make me think twice. I'm proud of what I'm doing, and I'm extremely honored that God gave me things. A lot of people say, "Oh, do you have bodyguards?" And I say, "You crazy? No, I go everywhere. As a matter of fact, I visit some of, because a lot of my enemy, I know them and I know whatever, and I visit them, sit down with them. Whether people think you crazy, I go there because I'm proud of what I'm doing and I'm very confident. But most important, I'm very faithful to my destiny. I don't worry about what people plan or whatever. If that was the case, I would not be doing this. By the way, if I could be, if like wealth or whatever, I could be just like them and be so celebrated by them because that's what they want me to do. But I'm not doing it. That's not who I am.
Sheikh Musa Drammeh, I want to thank you for your time. I really found this very inspiring. I'm sure that our audience will as well. I just want to wish you the best of luck and success in everything that you're doing. Keep going strong. We need many people like you in the world. If you can maybe leave us off with a final message, what would your final message be? to our audience?
I want your audience to know that I'm a Muslim representing 57 OIC nations, among them 22 Arab League members. Among them are nations where you can place Israel 90 times. For example, Saudi Arabia sits on 830,000 square kilometers of land. Israel sits on less than 9,000. You can place Israel 90 times in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is one of the Arab League nations, one of the OIC nations. I want your audience to know that Allah said Israel belonged to the Israelis. And I want your audience to know that there are growing Muslim intellectuals that are affirming Israel's right to sovereignty, Israel's right to independence, Israel's right to safety and security, and Israel's right to continue to be the blessings to the world. Israel is one of the smallest nations on the face of the earth that fights for survival every day, yet it is among the top 10 most innovative nations. And there's a reason for that. It is not something that is available to everybody. These are special people, and Allah says it. And the sooner we accept it and realize it, the sooner the world will benefit from the blessings Allah bestow on Israel and Israelis. The more we fight them, the worse it is for even the people we think we're fighting on their behalf. Let's accept Israel. Let's travel to Israel, by the way. Everybody must visit Israel because it is a special place. Go there, visit it, take a lot of people, especially Muslims. Thank you for having me on. And anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real, it is stored safely, it is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.